So today we are going to be learning about the Crystal Palace, and we are going to be looking at how it was built, why it was built, where it was built, for what was the reason to have. We're going to be looking into the history about the Crystal Palace in just 3 minutes. So without even wasting a minute, we are going to get into today's session. So the Crystal Palace was one of the most innovative buildings that was built during the 19th century. As you could see, the whole huge building that stands with a three-storied structure, and you could clearly observe that it has a lot of arches and then the barrel vault on the top, and then has a linear rectangular roofs on the either sides. So this was an output of the Industrial Revolution. So when people of the Britain wanted to showcase their pride of whatever they have manufactured. The Great International Exhibition is also called as the Crystal Palace, and sometimes it is also known as the works of industries of all nations, where people from all over the world wanted to exhibit their products and show their pride as well. So now we're going to know about where was it built. So this was built in the Hyde Park in London by Joseph Paxton. So what happened was that Queen Victoria has announced for a competition. So, and out of 300 entries, Joseph Paxton won the competition. He being a gardener for 12 years, he knows how exactly a greenhouse, that is how a glass could respond to the climate. And that's when he ended up designing the whole building of glass and whatnot. We're going to see in the upcoming slides. So this project took roughly around 8 months to finish off its construction phase. So it was known for its architectural construction and design. And why was it built? As I told you earlier, it wanted to house exhibits from all over the world. So the whole Crystal Palace is made up of two components only. So we are going to now look into the material aspect. So the first material was they used the cast iron rods of standard size they used, and then they also followed some sort of plate glass panels. Either it was single or they had a series of standard sizes, and the whole structures were built together around more than 50,000 visitors from the world, and the exhibition space was around some 90,000 square meter. Queen Victoria took an initiative, or she was called to open this great exhibition in the Crystal Palace. So let's get started to learn about the plan. So as you could look at the plan, the main building of the plan was around 1848 feet and 408 feet in terms of its width, and the height was around 108. So it was constructed over 18 acres of land. So as you could see how huge this was being done. Now, as you see the small squares, these small squares are nothing but that is showing the column grid, which is about 7.3 meter cross 7.3 meter. So we are going to look all that in detail in the upcoming slides. So as you could see, there is an entry from the Hyde Park and there was an entry from the Knightsbridge. So it had its frontal approach and then the rear approach. This is one of the look from the Hyde Park. So this is the frontal approach towards the Crystal Palace. Now, as you could see, the perimeter of the plan, it has lot of small dots, right? These dots are nothing but these are series of pillars that's lined along the perimeter, which creates its stability to have a long good stability for the whole structure. So this is the ground floor, and then the upper floors where heavy machineries were kept on for display in the ground floor, whereas light structures are kept on the upper floor. So this was the main exhibition space, or also called as a transit area, where it had two upper floors that would be accessed only from the balcony. So initially it had a rectangular or a flat roof, and then what happened, Paxton came with an idea of having a barrel vault in the center to welcome more aesthetical appealing to the building. So now we saw about the 7.3 2 by 7.2 modular grid, right? So each of this grid has its paneled like this. Okay, so one particular panel had 3 doors. The first one was the double door, the second one was the glazed door, and the third one was the solid board door. So as you could see at the top, everything has its fan light attached, louvers. This was a fan light door, this is a glazed door, and this is a solid boarded door. The flat profile sections and all the arches system in the Crystal Palace followed the ridge and furrow glazing. It's nothing but the ridge. The top point here we call as a ridge, and the bottom point here we call as the furrow. So they followed this kind of a pattern throughout the entire structure. And as far as they used a lot of glass, there was no shortage of light in the daytime, but they suffered from excessive light and heat gain, so they wanted to add up some cooling elements, so they sprayed it with water, and sometimes they also invested on the mechanical ventilations. So to know about the transept, that is the central space, it has been laminated with the wooden beams and also some chassis for the glazing system to take up the load. So now this slide talks about the girder systems. Girder systems are not nothing but the long iron beams that acts as a support. So basically it was a minimum of 48 feet and the maximum of 72 feet. So the people trying to gather it and put it in alignment. Some pictures of Crystal Palace, how it looked. There's a view from the staircase, and this is a crane and the process, and then a man who's fixing the drain pipe, and this is how it looked from the inner parts. So basically, now look at this image. This is how it looked with the exhibits and the people and the gallery spaces in the first floor. Now looking on to the roofing unit, there's a long triangular prism, right? So this was both made extremely light and very strong so that it could take up only minimum amount of material, but at the same time have its own stability. So these were few machinery exhibits inside the Crystal Palace. So this is the power that they wanted to show, how good they were at the protection during Industrial Revolution. So it's one of the view from the Central Avenue, and yes, so they assembled all this with an extraordinary speed where about 80 glaziers would come and then they would fix, let's say around 18,000 panels would have been fixed in just a week. So this was the most on a talk of the thing about the Crystal Palace. And then there's a pair of ribs prepared for raising. So can you see this was the ribs that they fixed it up on the transept area. This is one of the view from the north bank. So, and after finish, they also had the testing of the gallery because it's an exhibition space where you're going to have a huge crowd at a time. So they had the testing done properly, and one of the view from the building. Yeah. So after the whole Crystal Palace was done, Paxton added up a tree in the center, which is about 8 meters, and this became a sensation of for the birds. So now let's look into the few exhibits of the Crystal Palace and how it looked. So as I told you, it depends upon the country. The first what we see is about the Indian exhibit, how they had the royal carpets and the mask and the costumes. So everything belonging to the Indian custom. Another example of the Indian exhibit where you could see the leopard or tiger skins and the guns and no, all these facts about Indian exhibit. And the Canadian, as you could see, the boats, they were known for the boats and no, hunting. So fur and stuffs were being shown in the Canadian exhibit. And this is China exhibit. They were known for ceramic and decorative artifacts. So they exhibited all of these things. And then Turkey, they were known for the carpets, and then the vases. So all of such products were being displayed. So finally moving on, what happened to Crystal Palace? So exactly this is was the tragedy that happened. So there was a small fire that happened in the clock room, let's say around some 1936 during November 30. So what happened? This flame started to spread quickly. Since the flooring was about made of wood, it spread very quickly and the entire building was destroyed. So they didn't have finance to overcome and build or retain the Crystal Palace, and that's how the Crystal Palace came to an end. Thank you so much for watching and hope you like this video. Bye bye.